It has been a very interesting week to start free agency, and it all popped off with the news that Arik Armstead was going to be released. But was it that simple? It was starting not to feel that simple, and we have confirmation that, in fact, a trade was put together regarding and involving Arik Armstead, and it fell through at the last minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way around the moon. We're going to start at the beginning and then we'll finish up with what happened and with what just came out. So let's follow along, shall we? And for me, this whole thing with the trade started yesterday when Diana Rossini went on KMBR and she was talking about Arik Armstead and a bunch of the moves that were being happening and all those different types of things. And at this point, we had already known for about 3 days that Arik Armstead was going to be released, right? And so that's what all the conversation was. But she kept talking about market. She kept saying there's interest in a market and it's developing. And listen, I've been following the NFL long enough to understand what those words mean. That means there's demand. And when there's demand, that means you can facilitate a trade. Now, although no language had indicated towards actual a trade occurring, I can read between the lines and I could see that that is what was occurring. At least, so we made a video last night. We used that clip, and that was my biggest takeaway from it was there might be a trade materializing here with Arik Armstead. Now, I got a lot of pushback from fans. Hey, that's fine. There's no trade. He's getting released. Okay, that's fine. Because that's ultimately what happened. He did get released. So they were right at the end of the day. But I could sense that something was going on. So I made the trade video yesterday about, hey, is a trade percolating right now? And then Diana Rossini this morning quote tweeted Matt Barrows, again, using very similar language. I can even pull it up so you can see it. Teams are expected to have interest in Arik Armstead. Sources tell me one of them includes the Titans. GM Rand Carthon knows Armstead from his days in San Francisco. I posted it. If you look at my caption on Instagram, it says, starting to sound like Arik Armstead could potentially get traded. That was 12 hours ago this morning. And since then, obviously, we know what the outcome has been. But from looking at that and seeing that, I could sense something. Something was going on. And sure enough, okay, Arik Armstead gets released. All right, no trade happened. That's unfortunate. It would have been phenomenal to be able to get something in return for Arik Armstead outside of just cap relief, right? Well, it turns out, according to a report put out by NBC Sports, uh, that there was a trade in place. And in fact, it had completely fallen through. So this is what we have. Report Armstead for Malik Collins trade between 49ers and Texans fell apart. My spidey senses were tingling. I could feel a trade percolating. And sure enough, there was a trade. And the details are even more fascinating to why this trade fell through. This trade was going to happen if not for one of the biggest moves of free agency. Let's get into it. I love this stuff. I love the behind the scenes, the inner workings, like the loopholes, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. It's fascinating to me. So it's been something that I've been doing for a long time. I've been tracking these types of things. I feel like I can sense certain patterns in the way people communicate and report things. And the pattern that I sensed was feels like there's a trade brewing with Arik Armstead. And sure enough, that's exactly what was happening. In this report, it says before releasing veteran defensive tackle Arik Armstead on Wednesday, the 49ers tried to trade him to the Texans for Malik Collins, but the deal fell apart after Houston agreed to terms with free agent edge rusher Danielle Hunter. The Athletic Matt Barrows reported, citing a source briefed on the situation. Ha ha! Would you look at that? Remember, the interaction this morning between Diana Rossini, who went on the radio yesterday, and Matt Barrows, who's confirming that there was a trade. I was like, this sounds like a trade. I was like, this legitimately sounds like a trade is happening. No trade. No trade. He's getting released. Okay, fine. Whatever. We'll see. So here we are. This is the story. This is a report. This isn't a rumor. This is a report of sourced information of what actually happened behind the scenes. Is there was a deal in place for Arik Armstead to be traded to the Texans for Malik Collins. But because they traded for Danielle Hunter, who I believe got paid $49 million guaranteed for 2 years, the deal fell through. And they weren't able to complete the trade. So because of that, then the San Francisco 49ers pivot. They still want Malik Collins. They get him for a 2024 seventh round pick. And that completes the trade. And then a couple hours later, Arik Armstead is released, and now he can sign elsewhere. Sounds like he might sign with the Texans if we're, again, reading between the lines. So the fascinating part about this is that everything was pointing towards a trade, and it actually was. And it fell through because the Texans make one of the biggest moves of free agency, and it takes up all the money that they could have paid towards Arik Armstead. And then the question becomes, well, what was that deal? What did that deal look like? Because if all it took was a seventh round draft pick to get Malik Collins, well, if you look at Arik Armstead, that's a top 10 interior defensive tackle in the entire league. He's in a different tier than Malik Collins. Now, Malik Collins looks like a quality defensive tackle, but Arik is he's a complete tier or two above. So would there have been something else in return? What would have the San Francisco 49ers gotten? Malik and? That's kind of what it feels like. It would have been Malik and. Just throwing it out there because clearly if they were willing to part with Malik for a seventh round draft pick, I don't know. Feels like there could have been more. I'm just saying. I'm speculating. That's what I like to do. So anyways, we know how it goes. 49ers get Collins from the Texans anyways. $8 million base salary this year. They release Arik Armstead. He gets hit with a post June 1st designation, which means they'll open up about $18 million in cap space the following year, or excuse me, after June 1st. But to me, the fascinating thing was that this wasn't an outright release. The 49ers were trying to trade him. And that makes the most sense, right? You have an asset. You have a guy who's worth something. Try to get something for him, not just flat out release him. So I like the fact that they tried. I like the fact that the 49ers actually tried to get something in return for Arik after, the contract restructuring kind of broke down or what have you. It's just wild. It's just wild how things turn out, right? Because we could have seen a trade, but Danielle Hunter getting signed messed that all up. And it's just crazy, like the butterfly effect that things have is, well, would the 49ers have gotten a pick and Malik? Would they have gotten a player and Malik? What would the compensation would have looked like? What would have that been? That's the question I want to know. But again, fascinating that again, the woulda, coulda, shouldas, the peel behind the curtain of what really was going on this whole time, and it was the 49ers trying to facilitate a trade for Arik Armstead, which makes sense. But it didn't come to fruition because the Texans hit a home run with one of the free agent signings in Danielle Hunter. I love this stuff. This is why I love spec. It's at the end of the day, it's still speculation. But when you like realize, like, yeah, I was on the right track, it makes this stuff more fun. It makes it more enjoyable to follow and read between the lines and follow the trends and connect the dots. And you just kind of sit back and you watch, and things will reveal themselves to you. You just have to pay attention. So here we are. We know what the outcome is, but a trade could have happened, except it fell through. What do you guys think about this story? What do you think about the trade falling through? What do you think about the fact that the 49ers almost actually got something in return for Arik Armstead? Um, and who knows what that would have been? I personally love the idea of like, hey, Cleveland, send us Greg Newsom. Hey, but of course, it's not what happened. So, hey, interesting stuff, in my opinion. You let me know, though, in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.